I like to say I have a PhD in failure. With all those mistakes, if I can help somebody avoid some of those things and move along the path quicker, that's really what gives me that fulfillment joy that people are always talking about. I didn't think it would happen to me, but it did happen, and it will happen to a certain percentage of us when we're not expecting it. So that was one of the most painful financial decisions I've made. The only way we can grow as people and as business owners and as our companies grow is by embracing that discomfort. A few minutes ago, we are talking about, oh, I've heard this before or whatever. Well, good, because you probably need to hear it again.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast, coming back to you here today with another king on the stage, my brother Robert Poole. How we doing this morning, Robert?
Yeah, perfect. Better now I'm talking to you, Chaz.
Well, we're going to have to disseminate that down, figure out why the heck that matters to you, but I appreciate that nonetheless. We're recording pretty early here this morning, and at least really early for you. I appreciate your attentiveness to not only just your business and wanting to share with people what you do, but there's going to be a lot of value here because of what you do. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the listeners to pay close attention. They're going to get plenty here today. So Robert, tell us what kind of business that you got.
Yes, absolutely. My business is Total Business Results. We're a B2B marketing firm. Kind of our specialty has always been cold calling, in particular with B2B. But we have, in recent years, branched out and started offering additional services to our clients. So we do everything from educational work, seminars, educational type of stuff, events, mostly virtually. We do business coaching, which is sort of my specialty and background. And then we also offer some implementation services along with the B2B cold calling. We also do, limited social media stuff, management, advertising, websites design, pretty much it's driven by what our clients need. And so that's where our business is right now.
I love it. I love it. You've got get your hand in a few things that would be valuable for some of these listeners. I want to talk obviously about your story and some of your services and stuff. But before we do that, why are you an entrepreneur? Why are you like? What's the bigger purpose? Maybe even below that. Why are you after this thing called life? What gets you excited?
That's always a good question and I think it changes, depending on where we are in our stage in business, our stage in life. This may sound bad, but I'm just being real. When I started out, it was because what a lot of people do is, in my 20s, when I got out of the military, I wanted to make money. I wanted to get rich,
Yeah.
and I also had enough of having a permanent boss like in the military. And so didn't want to be limited. So many years, that was really my focus, was making money.
Yeah.
And I just jumped from opportunity to opportunity and what I thought was best to do that, which is great. Hey, we're all in business to make money to start off with. But I think as I grew and I experienced different things in my business career and my personal life, that kind of shifted, where I realized that I wasn't really in business for me. I was in business to serve other people. And that was a huge transition. And I'm a man of faith. And so I believe that I'm put on this earth with certain skill sets. And one of those skill sets is in business and being able to help other business owners based upon the experiences that I've had. And so that's really my passion, is to help others skip some of the mistakes, because I've made a lot of them. I like to say I have a PhD in failure. And, with all those mistakes, if I can help somebody avoid some of those things and move along the path quicker, that's really what gives me that fulfillment joy that people are always talking about. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it really does. As you get older and get more mature in business and in life, I think you start to value those things more.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love the acceleration of that via maturity, via failures, via all the things that we do experience over the course of time. It changes our perspective. For you, you mentioned military. First off, thank you for your service. But give us a description there. I mean, you kind of painted that as a picture of like a box, and you were kind of in it. And then you were like, anything to do to get out of it. Tell us, give us your maybe experience to kind of give us that transition there.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, my father was in the Army, not career, but so I always had, and I was always been very patriotic family. And so, service was always important. And so I was driven towards that. And so I was able to get into West Point, and which is the academy for the Army, and then an Army officer afterwards. And when I got out, when I graduated from West Point and started as an officer, it was right in the mid 90s where, for lack of a better term, I think the military and as a country, we're a little bit unsure of where to go and how to use the military. We were doing things like peacekeeping missions and humanitarian things like going to Haiti. My unit did. I didn't go on that deployment, but to basically help with logistics and everything. But it wasn't. I kind of signed up to, let's face it, fight the big bad Soviets, which is what I grew up with, and that all kind of went away in the mid '90s. And I felt that I felt the military was directionless at the time,
Mm.
and so I got a little bit disillusioned with it. And I think my personality, I realized that I tend to be, for lack of a better term, a little rebellious when it comes to authority. I love following great leaders. I have no problem with that and admire people, but sometimes in bureaucracies, you end up following leaders that
Yeah.
you follow them because you have to, not because they're a good leader. And that drove me nuts. And so when I got out, I really wanted to get into entrepreneurship to be able to sort of write my own ticket and all that. And so when I got out, I did a variety of sales jobs, everything from commercial real estate to, headhunting, corporate headhunting. I did financial consulting. I did a variety of things, but it all sales oriented because I know and knew then that sales is, what drives our companies
Yeah.
and is the oxygen, if you will. So I figured I had to get good at that first. And that kind of kick-started my entrepreneurial career that came out of the military. I had a fantastic experience in the military in West Point and, taught me a lot of those lessons that, just proved invaluable in business. And so I always highly recommend it, service for any young person because you learn so many great valuable lessons that you can use in life. So real positive experience overall.
Yeah, and I appreciate maybe the distinction between structure and being maybe boxed in. I think you did a great job there of kind of giving the distinction. But you mentioned sales. I'm a big sales guy as well, big history. I know that you have a huge history in cold calling, and now you even offer that as a service, like you said. So let's talk about cold calling for a second, because there's a lot of people that know there should be cold calls happening in their business or some sort of outreach. Let's just say that, because maybe cold calls isn't applicable, even though you and I both know probably every business could use a cold call or two. Talk about that for you. Like, how did you learn how to cold call? What's the importance of cold calling? Why do you offer it as a service? Like, you've been in that lane for a long time. Give us a little juice there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, cold calling is one of those things that, particularly these days, let's face it, the buzz is digital marketing. And a lot of people think that cold calling is obsolete or,
Right.
it doesn't work anymore. And that's understandable because, I mean, a lot of people think of cold calling, they think of, the 80s, 90s type of, getting the call, interrupting your dinner type of thing. And that residential consumer based cold calling is definitely gone. Most of the calls you get today are some kind of scam. But so I started back in, the mid '90s cold calling, and it was primarily out of necessity. The internet was just coming online. There wasn't really any kind of digital marketing. And so, when you're starting out, a lot of times you don't have the money for advertising and, things like that. And so I started it out of necessity and just started to learn, by experience a lot of it. And, it was in different coaching programs. I was heavily into real estate, doing a lot of cold calling then. And, you start doing thousands of cold calls. Eventually you kind of figure things out.
Right.
And, I stopped counting, I think when I was about 15,000 cold calls in. And so over the years, I figured I've probably done several hundred thousand. And, experience is the best teacher, as you know, for anything in life. But cold calling is one of those things that was very relevant back then and is still relevant today. But as you mentioned, Chaz, it has to be with the right type of business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good experience for anyone to do. Most people have a fear of cold calling like they do of death. It's right up there next to, public speaking or something.
Uh-huh.
But it's a skill that can be learned like anything else.
Yeah.
And, but it's also one of those things that, there's a lot of passive activity in marketing. Cold calling has the benefit of you're putting somebody on the spot, unlike when you're trying to get them to click or you're trying to get them to call you or things like that. With cold calling, you're forcing them to make a decision right now. And for the right type of businesses in B2B, typically it's higher ticket items. That makes more sense. If you can get the right list of people, get access to them. And it's just like everything, it's your right market. We did a survey of some of our clients. This is maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And, we did a survey, how do you consume things? How do you do marketing your business and how do people approach you? And we were just shocked because I think it was 72% of our clients pretty much said they don't use social media in their business at all.
Wow.
And of course that's changed a few,
Yeah.
as it goes on, but the point is that those small business owners are not reacting. They're not sitting there on Facebook all day. And so there are different ways to reach them. A lot of times those business owners, will pick up the phone if their receptionist is out for the day, so you'll get to the owner that way. And they respond much better to a human because we're all starving for that. So
Yeah.
I know this is a long answer, but cold calling is definitely effective in the right context. And it's not something that you necessarily have to do yourself. There's companies like us, I think it's a great exercise for people to get comfortable with it, to learn how to do it themselves.
Right.
As a business owner, just in general, I think we should be able to do most of the roles that are in our company, maybe not do them well, but have an understanding of how they work.
Yeah.
So cold calling is one of those things that I think that we should all have an understanding of.
Yeah, I agree with you. What do you think about just maybe the shifting of the mind of what a cold call is? I'm just thinking of like, most business owners, even, like thinking of a guy that just got started this last year, right? And he's like, okay, I got to go get new business. Well, he's probably going to join like a local like lunch meetup or a chamber of commerce, or he's going to, call his friends and family and say, hey, I'm now in business to do whatever. I mean, that's kind of cold calling.
Yeah,
Whether I know this person well, I've decided that maybe wouldn't be considered a cold call, but it's outreach. And so I think that's why in
yeah,
my mind, if I'm outreach, if I'm reaching out to people that I know or don't know, it doesn't have to be this like strenuous, like another cold call. I went to the chamber, I had lunch, I shook hands with 10 or 15 people, I got a couple cards. I'm going to follow up with them and have an individual lunch. That's called networking, but that was the
mhm,
same as me making 10 phone calls and just, hey, I'm a
yeah,
local business owner. I do marketing and you are a contractor and I'd like to see if I can help you or you want to grab lunch. Like it's the same thing, right?
yeah. The bigger picture is that it's this misperception of sales that I think a lot of people have, and,
That's
and
right.
a lot of business owners. We think, a lot of business owners, let's face it, think, oh, I'm not a salesperson. I don't like to sell. I hate selling. Any number of that sentiment.
Right.
And the what it's a misunderstanding because everyone in life is a salesperson. We just don't realize it. Like you're talking about, Chaz, if you're talking to people and you're telling them about your business, you're selling. And, if you're talking to your friends, for instance, you just saw a great movie. What do you do when you see a great movie? You tell your friends about it. Hey, wow, I saw this great movie with blah, blah, blah actor in it. And I wasn't expecting much, but it really turned out great. And here's the storyline. And you should go see it. In fact, I'll go see it again. You want to do it Friday. And you just did the hook story close on them. You just didn't even realize it. And so it's the same thing with cold calling. And I think if we change our mentality to, hey, I'm a business professional. I own a business or, I'm representing a business. And I'm just going to talk to other businesses that may have a need for our service. And I've got to find those that do. And if I don't reach out to those people, then I'm actually doing them a disservice by not doing that. They need my service. There's somebody out there that needs it, desperately needs it. They're going to get taken by another company that doesn't do a good job, that doesn't have good ethics. And so it's our moral responsibility to get out there and ask them and
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like exactly like you said, it's a misperception because we do it all the time. We just don't even realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you kind of almost categorize it as a duty. I've thought that way for a long time. One of the part of my visualization that I read through every morning, Gathering the Kings is a peer-to-peer mastermind group for entrepreneurs. And part of what I read is that there's incredible owners that are already looking for exactly what we do. And I have to meet them. Like it's my duty. It's my obligation because they need what we have. And you can fill that in with whatever business that you have. For me, I'm helping people with a community and helping them better themselves and become better business owners, but then obviously every other part of their life. And so it's like, okay, I can build decks or I can do marketing or I can do whatever. And it's like the scenario still remains the same, that there are people out there, literally, to Robert's point, that need your service, that today wrote down in their goals for Q1, I need to find a good marketing agency, or we're going to redo our deck this year. They've written it down, and they're
Yeah.
looking for a high quality company, and it just is a matter of you reaching out to them in some form or fashion, phone call, networking, podcast. I mean, whatever works. Okay. All right. So, Robert, you've given us a little bit of a story here on this line. I appreciate that. You mentioned that you've got hundreds of failures. I'm only going to beg you for one. Okay. But But I want it juicy, man. I want to know like how much money did you lose? What how terrible was it? Did you spin into some sort of a downward spiral? Like give us the juice of this terrible situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the number one thing that's affected my business probably in the last 6, 7 years now, in an event that happened, I think that might be the most relevant. It wasn't something that I initiated as far as a mistake, but well, part of it anyway. But I'll just tell you, I this was back in 2017. It was the week before 4th of July. I went out with my family to our timeshare in Carlsbad, California, enjoy life, blah blah blah. And I'd mentioned I've always been very money driven, and that was kind of my reason for doing business. And I read a book, and I for the life of me I can't remember it, but it was about how to create raving fans as customers.
Yeah.
And I just had a light bulb moment where I realized, geez, I've been doing this wrong all these years. I should be in the service business of serving people. I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. And and I had a business partner for many, many years. We started our company in 2002, and we'd done other ventures before then. So, he was, like family to me. And he was always better about that. He was less money driven and more about the customer than I was. And so I literally was planning on having a conversation with him when I got back and say, you know what, you've been right all these years. I've been wrong. And we need to really change our company fundamentally and how we look at things. And so I think 4th of July was on a Monday. And I came in the office just because, I tend not to take time off too much. And he didn't come in, which wasn't abnormal. And then the next day I came in and he didn't come in. And I thought, well, he's just late, or, he's busy doing something that wasn't totally out of the norm for him. And then his fiance started calling me, and she said, yeah, I haven't heard from him since yesterday and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, he's got always been that way, and sometimes he'll just go MIA for short periods of time. But she kept bugging me. So she said, can you go over to his house? And because he didn't answer my call. And so I went over there, and unfortunately I found him slumped over his computer. He had passed away with a heart attack the day before.
Oh
And
goodness.
so here I am, I'm suddenly in charge of this multi-million-dollar company that we'd built up for, 17, 18 years at that time.
Yeah.
And, he had always been the public face of the company.
Mm.
He had always dealt primarily with the clients, and I was kind of behind the scenes running operations and running the sales force and things like that. And, an enormous amount of work. And the great thing about having a partner is I was able to take as much time off as I want. I took a 3-week honeymoon, like I said, multiple vacations a year because I knew he could kind of cover for me temporarily and
Yeah.
everything would be fine. And then suddenly I realized, oh my gosh, I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I was at the office at 4 in the morning, working until 7 at night. And, it was just overwhelming trying to do everything he was doing. And I wasn't the person that he was because we were completely different personalities.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm going through this, decision making process. What do I do? Do I try to continue the company? Do I fold the company? Do I sell the company? And fortunately, we had put together a quick buy and sell agreement out of, paranoia from me primarily. I literally wrote it myself like 2 years before. It
Wow.
was 2 pages. And one of the things I put in there was, we'll have to have a business evaluation done. And so I started to do that with his errors. And I went through that process. And, part of it, of course, is what's typically good advice for businesses to have what they call, key man, key person insurance,
Yeah.
so if one partner dies, the others, you can buy out the estate of the other one.
Yeah.
Well, we thought we had term policies that were, I think were like 10-year policies or something, and they came up for renewal or lapse or whatever it was. And we were like, neither of us are in great health right now. We're out of shape. Let's take a few months off and we'll reapply to get the insurance. We'll let it lapse and get in better shape, get better blood work done, all that good stuff. And we never got the new policies in place. And so here I am with this valuation that's saying this company is worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And guess what? I had no way to buy out his estate. And boy, talk about a costly mistake. I mean, literal cost. This was not cheap. I'll say it that way. And that was one of the most painful lessons I have learned over the years is so if you have a business partner, make sure you have key person insurance and you have that worked out because you think it won't happen to you. And as I didn't think it would happen to me, but it did happen and it will happen to a certain percentage of us when we're not expecting it. So that was one of the most painful financial decisions I've made. And this is a little bit different topic, but you know, going through that process also changed me as a person and forced me to grow as a person and a business owner that, had I said far reaching, kind of a cascade of things, of changes I had to make as a person.
Right.
And so it actually turned into a lot of ways, positive. So it sounds like doom and gloom, but yes, make sure you're covered with insurance wise, whether even if you don't have a partner, just for your family's sake, because when you don't think it'll happen, it will happen. But sometimes bad things can turn into positives, as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the number one thing, financially, at least as far as mistakes that I've done over the years.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, I mean, it literally cost you millions of dollars, that one little decision. The crazy part about a decision like that is that it seemed so simple to you because you had already made that choice ahead of time. And then, unfortunately, the bad choice of letting it lapse and, that type of thing. But there are some people listening right here who's hearing this for the first time. Like, oh, that makes sense. Have a strategic partner. If he goes away or if she goes away, that's bad. I should get that liability covered, which is what life insurance or those types of policies are for. Okay, great. But that person didn't even know. So like if that situation had happened to them yesterday, they would not have even known that they were experiencing a bad thing, right? And so that, again, fast forward to your story of, well, I learned a bunch and actually I became a better person and I learned some this and I learned that and I was able to persevere. All of those things were the gift that the other person would have experienced too. But now that you gave them this next gift of, hey, go get policies, that transition probably would have been a whole lot easier. There would have been a payout. There would have been a payout to the family. You would have kept right on going, but maybe you wouldn't be where you are, right?
Oh yeah, that's the way life works. So we can never really see it coming, So be prepared as we can, but it's kind of like in the army used to say, you can have a great plan, but when the bullets start flying, that
it gets
that
real.
goes out the window.
Yeah, that's right. It gets real. Well, tell us about a good decision. I mean, I love the vulnerability of that one, but tell us something that you've done well with that maybe these listeners can go implement in their business today.
Yeah, I think, and this is actually related to that. I mentioned that I became a better person because of that, because I was forced into it, was forced to grow in a good way. But one of the things that I picked up along the ways was sort of a different way of looking at, you can call it whatever you want, catastrophes, challenges, problems, whatever, I'm not talking about, your coffee's got cold. I'm talking about, significant problems like that.
Yeah,
Those kind of problems can either, sink you, or you can use those problems to actually accelerate your business and accelerate you.
that's right.
And so I think one of the biggest things that I learned was that to stop looking at those situations like I had, because in the past I would, you have a catastrophe like that, I'd be running around, chicken with a head cut off, type of thing, and all this stress and gloom and doom, and it's very easy to go down that spiral.
Yeah,
But I picked up this idea that what happens to me happens for me.
yeah,
And, of course, it's certainly helped by my faith that, that God is ultimately in charge and that
yeah,
nothing's going to happen without his consent.
yeah,
But even if you're not a believer in that, you want to, the universe or whatever, doesn't really matter, because if you take the attitude that, okay, this horrible thing happened, but there is going to be good that comes out of it. And not only, it's not really a positive thinking type of thing, not a silver lining. It's as much as, okay, instead of looking for the good, you look at, what is this going to force me to do?
yeah.
Who is this going to force me to be?
Hmm.
And when you look at it, something like that, not only do you focus on how to get something positive out of it, but you also kind of change yourself and the mentality that goes with it. And so when you change that mentality, it gives you a certain power, a certain confidence that you didn't have before. Because let's face it, in some of those situations, you feel powerless. You feel like, oh, what am I going to do? The world is falling, sky's falling, type of thing.
That's right.
But when you start to take back your power, so to speak, and start to use it as, okay, this is going to force me to grow into this person that's going to take my company to the next level. Suddenly that gives you the confidence and the power that you need to go forward.
Yeah.
And so somehow, I kind of stumbled along that concept of what happened, or what happens to me happens for me. And I think it just fundamentally changed the way I look at business and life, quite frankly. And probably one of the biggest things that's made me money over the last 5, 6 years, is that mentality. So if I was talking to the me of 15 years ago, I would talk to me about, that concept and how to use difficult circumstances to figure out what's it's going to cause me to do. How is it going to cause me to grow?
Yeah.
How can I use this as impetus to grow? Because ultimately that's what it's about, is growth in business and in life.
Yeah. How do you tie this to? I mean, you're giving the opposite of comfort, right? You're saying that you were in a very uncomfortable position, but you embraced it so that you could grow. How is maybe the achievement of comfort the opposite, or maybe the wrong mindset that keeps us actually, or maybe sets us up for thinking like, oh, this is such a terrible thing, as opposed to, I wonder what this can do for me. If we're seeking comfort as opposed to learning, or just sheer optimism of like being okay with whatever happens to me. Again, whatever happens to me is happening for me. If I genuinely believe that, then I'm not really seeking comfort. I'm seeking the next level, whatever that looks like for me, the better version of me, the better version of my business, the better version of my marriage, the better version of me as a father, like whatever those definitions are. But I'm not seeking the easy road or the comfort. It's like, so tie these
Yeah.
together in maybe your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, along with that, and I've probably been better at the last few years, but I think it's embracing, Chaz, the discomfort that you're talking about, and understanding that if I'm comfortable, if I'm just hanging out and I'm not challenging myself, I'm not going to grow. And if I don't grow, my company's not going to grow. And it's actually going to go backwards. It's going to be stagnant, like you said, but it affects all areas of our life. If we don't put work into our marriages, if we don't uncomfortably grow and do things that, maybe I'm not used to. I'm not one of those people that compliments, people all the time. But guess what? If I don't compliment my wife all the time, that's going to eat away, and, that's going to hurt our relationship over the long term. So it's things like that. If we don't embrace discomfort, if we don't realize that this it's a good sign to have discomfort.
Yeah.
If we're if things are not scaring us a little bit, let's be real. If we're not nervous about doing something, probably shouldn't be doing it, because it's not getting us anywhere. The only way we can grow as people and as business owners, and as our companies grow, is by embracing that discomfort.
Right.
And it's almost like, if you're uncomfortable with an idea or something you're doing, obviously not something you're doing that's unethical or whatever, but if you're uncomfortable because you've never done it before, or you're worried about what other people think, any of those things, if you're uncomfortable, well, guess what? You're probably on the right track.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a sign to me anyway, that I catch myself and go, okay, I don't want to call this client, or I don't want to do this thing. It kind of makes me nervous in the back of my mind. I'm a little bit scared, if I'm honest with myself. Then I've learned to tell myself, oh, hey, you're on the right track. You definitely need to do this, because that's what's holding me back. I think it's Keith Cunningham, one of my favorite authors, who said, and maybe this wasn't his original quote, but everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I've really focused on the last few years to try to do that, to try to remind myself that, hey, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm on the right track, and I'm going in the right direction, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's a great point. It's a super cliche point, but I think that there's value there. That's why it's cliche. It's like this actually means something. So the listener paying attention here right now is like, okay, I've heard this before. It's like, no, stop. Shh. I know you've heard this before, but this is real. You've got to be able to embrace it. Okay, so what you're tying to that though, just at the last little piece there, was fear. Love it. How can I practically be in a new, uncomfortable, you know, pressing situation that you described, but also then remove fear. Now, fear is going to come naturally to a new situation like that, but then how can I deal with it and move it past? Because you and I both know if I step into a situation and then am absorbed with fear, I'm not either going to take action, I'm not going to do what I need to do, I'm going to be limited in my either thinking or in my ability. How can I then remove it, or how have you removed it?
Yeah, and well, I'll say it this way, at least for me, I don't know, maybe it's different for others, but the fear never completely goes away, at least, when you're first initially trying something, and that's natural and that's okay. It's to be expected. But the only way to get rid of that fear is to actually do what you're afraid of. I talk a lot about how small business owners are heroes in our society. We give a lot of credit to first responders and things and healthcare workers and, because of COVID and everything and,
Yeah.
military, law enforcement. And that's all absolutely true. They are heroes, but small business owners are heroes too. And it's because of this exact concept.
Yeah.
If you look at the definition of courage, it really is that you're afraid to do something, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so, when you come to that point where you're like, oh geez, I'm freaked out. I don't want to do this. I'm freezing up. That's the point where you need to have it in your mentality and a reminder, a little voice in your head that goes, okay, I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to be courageous and do this, accept the fact I'm scared of it, do it anyway. And because I know that once I do it, most likely it's going to be a lot easier. It'd definitely be easier the second time I do it. And the more I do it, the easier it's going to get. Just like cold calling, just like anything. It's, Tony Robbins talks a lot about physiology and, sometimes you got to get the body to move first.
That's right.
So sometimes we have to physically take an action. We've got to pick up that phone, we've got to show up to that meeting, force ourselves to go into it, knowing that once we get there, things will be okay. So I think it has to be an artificial pushing of ourselves sometimes. And so we have to, and the best way I've found to do it for me is that I've got that little reminder bell again going off in my head that says, okay, I'm scared. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go into this meeting. I don't want to talk to this client, but here I go. And I do it anyway. And I know on the other end of it, it'll work out. So it's sort of you're forcing yourself into that uncomfortable action. And that's really, in my mind, at least in my experience, the only way to get rid of that fear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope the listeners paying attention. You did a great job of breaking down the fake it till you make it kind of mantra. And it's not actually being fake. It's just doing something that maybe you don't know how to do super well yet with
Mhm.
courage through fear unto doing it better. And there's actually I have one of my favorite worship songs that I listen to, somewhat frequently. But there's a a bridge, a chorus. I don't know music that well, but that the artist sings. It says sometimes you got to sing your way into the truth. And so it's like
Mhm.
I can hear it. I want to believe it, but sometimes I just need to do it until my belief grows, is in essence what you've said, what the song says. And so I think that you're right, that doing and belief are attached, but you've got to define what that belief is. What you said in that moment is that when you take action, I was having this conversation with somebody on social media just this past week, and he was like, look, actions are everything. You are not your thoughts or beliefs. You are your actions. And I was like, well, let me just come in here and just tickle that a little bit, because you're right. I think that just like what Robert just said, I think that if you take action, your belief grows. But that is stemmed from a belief that if I take action, my belief grows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
not get it twisted here that I have to first have a belief. And it could be one out of a little bit of fear, a little bit of unknown. I got to take courage to get there. All those things are still thoughts and beliefs that I can say, okay, I'm going to go do this. And then the courage to actually go do it is the next step, which then can build the belief or the confidence in the thing that I'm saying that I'm fearful about. And so I just appreciate your perspective there. All of you gave belief, you gave the action, even the result. The result is then eventually at some time, I'm a master of cold calls, or I'm a master of talking in front of people when I'm an introvert, or I'm a great husband because I compliment my wife constantly. And at the beginning when I was doing that, it was kind of odd. It felt like I was forcing it, but now it flows out naturally. I do it multiple times a day. She loves it. Like, that's what I'm hearing you say. That's what I do, of course, as well. But man, it's like we just start building it into who we are. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly that last phrase, and I think that's the key, Chaz, is the more we do this, it's like anything, it's a muscle, it's a mental muscle. And the more we train ourselves to be able to take that action, to have that belief and then put it into practice by, like you said, you're an introvert, you don't want to go to that big meeting and network with a bunch of people, but you in the back of your head, that little alarm bell goes off and goes, walk through the door and walk through the door before you have a chance to change your mind.
That's right.
And so if we have that mantra and that little reminder voice in us that helps us get us over that, that helps remind us, because that's one of the things, that I think that's helped me a lot in business is that we tend to get away from the basics, if you will. You mentioned a few minutes ago, we're talking about, oh, I've heard this before or whatever. Well, good, because you probably need to hear it again. And I know that, for me, I need to constantly hear things because,
Yeah.
you know, you can set goals at the beginning of the year, for instance, or whatever. And 6 months later, you realize, well, geez, what happened, And it's because you didn't constantly remind yourself. And we have to consciously remind ourselves of things like this. We have to remind ourselves that, okay, I'm doing this. I'm scared of it, but that's okay. I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And if we remind ourselves of the basics, if you will, that's really what it comes down to, because businesses and life is not that complicated if you focus on the basic stuff. It's when we get wrapped up in we get sidetracked with all these other things that we kind of forget. And so being constantly reminded of, everything in life, I think is key. And I know it's certainly helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's so good. Great way to wrap it up too, because I think that the mindset of the entrepreneur, it's just tied to everything. You've just done a really great job there of kind of painting it as a baseline. You mentioned a few minutes ago that, if you had to talk to your, self 15 years ago, that you would talk to him about this concept. It's typically my last question, which is, if you had to talk to the younger version of you and you had a chance to whisper something in his ear, what would you say? And so I've kind of already set this up because you already answered it partially, but is that phrase what you would say? Is there encouragement behind it? I mean, imagine yourself at whatever age. Maybe it's 15 years ago, maybe it's you as a teenager. But if you did have that opportunity, what do you just instill into that person's maybe belief? Because that's really what we're talking about, that younger version. What do you give to that guy?
Hmm. I think, in business in particular, I think a concept that I didn't get for a long time was that my business is only going to grow to the extent that I do. And I don't know
Yeah.
who said that, somebody famous and brilliant, I'm sure. But I didn't believe that for a long time either, particularly when I was younger. But I think if I were to be able to talk to myself, I would say, hey, you need to focus on growing you. You need to get around the right people. You need to get the right mentors. You need to build those skill sets, and the business part of it will take care of itself. Because, you look at it and it's like, take Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, anybody who's super successful in their business. And if you had taken Zuckerberg when he was just starting out with Facebook, just founded Facebook, just came up with the technology, and you had plopped him into the role he has now, Facebook probably be bankrupt in a year or two, not even that. And it's because he couldn't handle it, because he hadn't become the person
Yeah.
that can build that business, sustain that business, and grow that business. And so if I were talking to myself, I'd say, focus on you, focus on growing yourself, because that will allow you to become the person that can do the thing, so to speak,
Yeah.
that can grow that business, that can be the husband you want to be, that can be the father you want to be, if you focus on growing you. And it sounds, touchy feely, but I really think that would be one of those fundamental changes. And if I'd known that earlier, I think that would have made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I'm going back through Atomic Habits right now for the umpteenth time.
Mm,
And he talks about everything that you're the principle that you're referencing, which is rather than focusing on the result, focus on the habit or the belief that you have, that then the actions can follow so that you can become the person that you need to be, which I think is great advice. So I think for the listener paying attention right now, whether they're new in business or they've been in business for 40 years, we're still paying attention to not necessarily our new targets for 2024, but who we need to become in order to hit those targets. It's just so much more important. So I appreciate that perspective. What do you think some of those things that you would have, like, okay, focus on you, younger Robert? What would be a thing or two inside of that younger Robert maybe needed to focus on as he was focusing on himself?
one of the things that I suffered with over many years was my people skills in how to build the right team at a company. And I came from a military background, which people in the military understand is very top down mentality,
Yeah.
as in if you're a leader, you tell somebody what to do and they have to do it. And they don't do it because they necessarily believe in the cause or believe in, what you're doing at the bigger picture. They're doing it strictly because they have to, and there'll be some consequences if they don't. And that's the way I ran my business for many years. It was a very top down, I give the orders, you implement. And that can work in the military context because you can't have people questioning things. But
Yeah.
in business in general, when everybody's sort of a volunteer, if you will, and they have other choices, I didn't understand that. And I think if I'd understood how to deal with people better and how to build that team, how to hire the right people,
Yeah.
how to get rid of the wrong people, quite frankly, how to build that culture, I think that would probably be the number one thing that would have affected me differently if I had been able to do that earlier in life. Because I know, like I said, the last 6, 7, 8 years, but maybe a little bit longer, that's really been a focus. And that has paid just huge dividends. So, yeah, if there were one thing that I could change, I think that would be it,
That's good.
would be how I deal with other people, particularly people that work for me or work with me.
Yeah, you said it earlier that everything we want, maybe it was Keith that said it, but everything we want is on the other side of fear. And I agree with that. I also think that everything we want is on like in an exchange with another human.
Hmm.
you know, Clients,
Yep.
family, fulfillment, joy. Like if you were just by yourself all the time, like what would
Yeah.
life really be? And so I think that all of those things that we've talked about here today are through another person. So I think that you're spot on with the skill sets there. Okay, Robert, there's people listening here today that are like, this is really good. It's great mindset. But the guys, I think he said he helps people grow their business through marketing or maybe some business coaching services. How can they get a hold of you? Maybe they want to get more information. Maybe they just want to network with you. How can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on all the major platforms, but probably the biggest, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. But all of them are the Robert Poole, like a swimming pool with an E on the end. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Be happy to talk to you or, about what's going on with your business and what you're looking to do. Or you can always email me directly. I can make myself available that way. So just email me at robert at operator2owner.net. There's some other company that's got .com that doesn't even make sense for the domain that they have, but so it's Robert at operator, to owner.net. And I'd be happy to set up a time we can chat and find out a little bit about your business and see if there's any way that, we could help each other out.
Love it. We'll put all that in the show notes as well. But Robert, I appreciate your mindset and even just the story of you making your way through that sticky situation with your partner, and of course being able to experience grief in the middle of all that. Just I admire you. I admire your success. I appreciate you sharing all that here today with the listeners. Thank you for being here, and blessings to you and your family and your business here in 2024. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.